and welcome to another episode of Parenting Corner on Therapy Cable. I am Dr. Nicole Chavez.
I'm Dr. Pari Baharian. Thanks so much for coming and joining us today.
So today we're going to talk to you a little bit about discipline and different types of discipline. Specifically, we want to look at a little bit about physical discipline versus non-physical forms of discipline.
Right.
So I know that, myself, Pari, I'm not sure about you, but I'm part of the one of the generations that grew up with a lot of physical discipline. So,
spanking.
Yes. Along with spanking, a lot of times there was, at least in my house, some yelling.
Yes,
as
lots
a form
of yelling.
Punishment. So, yeah.
Fear-based techniques.
Yes. That's what we would call them, right?
Yes.
So how do you get your child to comply? We kind of use these techniques that instill fear in the children, and then they are afraid of either making mom and dad mad or afraid of getting into trouble, and then so they be good.
Right.
Right.
Scare some sense into them.
Right. So Pari and myself are kind of on the non-physical form of discipline side of the fence.
Yes.
I guess you would say. We believe a lot of things about physical discipline, and that not using it is a better way.
Mm-hmm. And we also understand that it's a really personal choice, and perhaps that's what is comfortable for you, given the way you were raised, and maybe you were raised like we were with fear-based techniques, and you kind of say to yourself, well, maybe I didn't turn out so bad, and what's the problem with it? And we want to respect the way that you parent. And we're here today to kind of talk about, just have a little discussion about the pros and cons of spanking and physical discipline and other fear-based techniques.
Because you're right, probably they didn't really turn out bad because, I'm pretty sure, or I think, that I didn't turn out bad.
You turned out great.
But, and I know you didn't turn out bad, Pari. So, it's not always leading to a horribly negative outcome.
Right.
But I know for me it wasn't a fun experience.
Oh, surely not. Definitely not a fun experience.
I didn't like being yelled at. I definitely didn't like being hit.
No.
So it wasn't always pleasant.
Yes. And, for me, it kind of put a little voice in my head that it's kind of a critical voice there in my head that always follows me around, which is, you could be doing this better, and, do it faster, and do it better. And that's a driving force, and in some ways that's helped me to succeed. In other ways, it can be hard sometimes to have that. So it's what we are thinking about for the future for our children. So there are many reasons why we don't want to use physical discipline, and I know this is, for some of you, might be a little hard to grasp. Yes. What? You don't ever want me to hit my kid? You don't ever want me to yell at my kid? Mostly. Right, yeah. So, and I know it's hard because when I actually first talked to my husband about not hitting our kids, he thought it was kind of crazy. Right.
But with some time, he's able to kind of understand where I'm coming from.
Great.
So, Pari, what are some of the reasons maybe hitting our kids as a way of punishing or a way of getting them to not do something might not work?
Yeah, well, I think the bottom line is that spanking sends the wrong signal. So, really, there's a few reasons that happens. First of all, after a while, spanking kind of doesn't really work as much anymore. You kind of get used to it.
Yeah, you kind of gonna get a tolerance, and the kid's like, whatever. They know they're gonna get spanked. Then it's over, and they're like, okay, who cares?
Right. And then what happens is they don't know what else to do instead. They just know that what they did was wrong.
Right.
And they know very well that was wrong now that they've had that explicitly, told to them, yelled to them, or they were spanked. So they know what they did was wrong. But they don't really know what to do instead. It doesn't really give them that internal sense of motivation to do the right thing. Right. Isn't that what we want for our kids?
Right.
For them to just know to do the right thing.
Right.
So sometimes spanking can kind of go against that belief and that internal motivation to do the right thing.
Right.
And using other more effective discipline strategies like telling them what to do instead of what not to do, so they can make a better choice next time.
Right.
So that's one of the biggest reasons.
Yeah,
one of the biggest reasons.
And Pari and I have talked in previous episodes, and we will talk more about other ways to help our children do what we want them to do, or be kind of follow the rules or behave in the way we want them to. And those types of ways will help the child learn a sense of to do the right things because of they want to do them. Because they have learned a sense of responsibility, and not because I don't want to get in trouble or I'm afraid of somebody or some authority figure, and that's why I'm not going to do this. And so when they grow up, they can take this sense of responsibility and this internal sense of wanting to do the right thing into society with them.
Right.
Into school with them, as they go through school, into college, into, work, and into the rest of their life. They'll have learned this, how to kind of do what they should be doing. Yeah,
they're going to be really good employees, maybe one day managers, and they're going to help their employees have a sense of responsibility. It really just builds an empire of that internal sense of respect and responsibility. And that's what I think the bottom line is, that, most parents can agree that they want their child to respect them, and they want them to have a sense of responsibility and to do the right thing.
Right. And we don't ever want to say that you shouldn't do discipline or you shouldn't correct a child's behavior. And we're not saying that not using physical discipline, we're not, saying, well, just let the behavior go.
Oh, no way. Right. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Right.
Certainly we have to set limits, and there needs to be consistently set limits. And there needs to be rules that the child's going to follow. So that's not on the table for discussion here.
No, absolutely not.
Don't worry. So that's just another thing to consider. And another reason why spanking or physical discipline can kind of work against what you're trying to do. Sometimes, you're modeling violence, right, when you're spanking. And then sometimes what happens is the child may go out and be violent with others, maybe at school, or maybe hitting other kids, or trying to use violence, or yelling, or other types of fear-based techniques on other people.
Right.
It can happen.
It can. So, because what happens is,
it's not definitely going to happen, but it can.
But it's a possibility. Because what happens is kids learn that, well, I get hit when mommy or daddy doesn't like something, or I'm doing something I don't. So when somebody else is doing something I don't like, I'm just going to hit them. Why not? That's what, works.
Exactly.
So.
Right. Yeah, and it's just another reason that maybe to reconsider and maybe use some other strategies instead of physical discipline. We want to make sure we're modeling appropriate behavior for our children.
That's what I was going to say, the modeling. Right. So our kids learn from us.
Yes.
And especially when they're really little, they learn what they see, and they do what they see. And so it's really important for us as parents who have the most contact with them to be modeling and doing what we want our children to be doing.
Right. And if we can model a sense of, setting limits and helping them understand the reasons behind why they need to follow the rules, and making them really good members of society, using gentle, neutral tones, staying calm, and not blowing up, that's going to teach our children to really have an internal sense of they can calm themselves down, they're going to be able to self-regulate, they're going to be able to really, we're going to be able to avoid a lot of these debacles by teaching them the right way to start.
So, are there any other reasons that maybe some of the spanking might be, negative or may not work?
Well, I know that, it's really humiliating for a child. Right. It can be. We don't want to assume anything.
Yeah.
And it can detract from the relationship between you and your child. And, of course, we all have different types of relationships with our children. So, and it's, so it's important to think about how that might impact your relationship with your child.
Right. So, I have a client right now, and he's what we would call very authoritative. And he came to me and said, I've been yelling at my kids a lot, and out of frustration and anger, which we know happens. Sometimes we get really frustrated.
Oh yeah.
And he was like, I don't want to do that anymore. He basically saw the look in his kids' faces.
Oh, wow.
Sort of like the fear, and, they were scared, and kind of, he was able to realize I'm doing that to my kids, and kind of how that would impact his relationship with them. And he was like, I want to do something different.
Wow. What a moment.
It was pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah. That's great that he was able to see that in the child, notice how the child was feeling.
Right.
He was in it with his child in that moment and knew what his child needed.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Right.
Great. That's a really good example that you brought up. So there are some reasons that we wanted to bring up to you guys about what might be some reasons against using physical discipline or yelling or other forms of fear-based techniques. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, is it ever okay to use spanking? Ever? Is there ever a time that I can use it? And I thought it might be something that might be going through your mind.
Right. Well, what we want you to know is that to spank your child or not to spank your child is always your choice.
Yes.
And we do know that it's an acceptable form of discipline. So it's always your choice what you want to do.
Always.
But like I said before, Pari and I are, more of not hitting.
Yeah.
But there are some times where we may actually condone hitting.
And those are times when your child is going to be in danger. Okay, say for instance, the child runs out into the street, and you have to go and grab them. A swat on the hand might be a really good way of letting your child know that is not acceptable behavior, and they need to know that is not okay because they are going to get hurt.
Right. So we kind of want to convey the severity of the situation.
Yes.
And that this works really well, especially for younger kids who have a harder time understanding the verbal language. So, like our under 3-year-olds would be really appropriate for.
Yeah, so that might be a one time that you could use a swat as a form of physical punishment in order to deter the child from getting hurt. You might be wondering, well, what the heck am I supposed to do instead? Well, that's what our next segment is for, so I hope you guys can tune in to our next segment and maybe learn about some other techniques that we're going to teach you to, you are going to be doing something else to make your child behave and make sure they listen. Yes. So make sure to come join us for our next segment.
Hi, my name is Leanne Marquez. I'm a marriage and family therapist intern, and I work with biofeedback and neurofeedback as an integrative approach in therapy. And what that is that it's a body scan, and it scans your body or your brainwaves that gives me additional information about you. And these things could be unconscious, and that helps me with your therapy and helps you move along quicker. Also, I'm offering a free session, 20 minutes for you if you contact me. And I work with children, I work with adolescents and adults. So contact me at journeytobecomingwhole.com, or my number is 949-478-2324. Thank you.
Welcome back to Parenting Corner on Therapy Cable. I'm Dr. Nicole Chavez.
I'm Dr. Pari Baharian. Thanks so much for coming back and joining us.
In case you didn't join us for our previous segment, we talked a little bit about physical discipline, such as hitting or some harsh forms of discipline, like yelling at our children, versus non-physical forms of discipline. So in this segment, Pari and I would like to introduce some alternatives to yelling and hitting our children.
Yeah. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about tantrums and how to manage those, and also how we can dare I say it, prevent tantrums from even happening. I know that sounds pretty crazy, but there are some ways we can do that. Yeah.
Okay. So, Mark, tell us a little bit about how do we prevent a tantrum? Because a lot of times parents are, all of a sudden the kid's in like the throes of a tantrum. They don't know what to do. Their frustration levels are rising. And when we get really frustrated, that's typically when we start to like yell, and, maybe that's when we spank our children for doing whatever it is that they're doing.
And they're getting so out of control at that point. What else are you going to do?
Right.
You know what? And so there is some truth to when it's so out of control, what else do I do?
Right.
And because it's so big, because the child's up here and they're exploding, at that point, damage control is what we have to do.
Right.
And there's very little reasoning with the child at that time about moral things or why they shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
It's really important first to wait to cool off first before you're going to teach lessons.
Right.
They're not going to be able to learn a lesson. I don't know if you've tried when you're really upset or angry about something and someone's trying to teach you something. Not so much listening to that.
Right.
You're just kind of fuming on the inside. Same thing with kids after they tantrum.
Right.
So wouldn't it be great to kind of prevent that whole thing from happening? That's, what you wanted to know about, Nicole. So the way to do this is going to vary, of course, with each child. However, some really good cues are for you to notice your child as they're getting increasingly more upset. So if you're noticing that they're asking you multiple times to do something and you're busy, one way to kind of prevent their behavior from escalating is to just simply, and I know this is so hard, maybe you're on the phone, for example, and you're on the phone, you're trying to talk to your friend, and they're in the middle of going through a divorce or something really serious, and you need to be there for them, right? And so you're trying to talk with them, and then, little Bobby over there is like, Mommy,
pulling at your leg.
Look at this, look what I made, look what I made, look, Mom. And they don't stop. And you're just like, I'm on the phone. We've all had this situation happen. So often what you can really do to prevent that from happening, and so you could have an actual conversation with a friend, is to just say, Sally, I'm going to put the phone down for 30 seconds. Okay, you put the phone down, you go down, get down on Bobby's level and say, what would you want to show me?
This picture I made, Mommy.
And that's it.
Right.
That's usually all it is.
Right. We call that a 30-second burst of attention.
Yeah, and that's 30 seconds. Your friend can wait 30 seconds. Chances are she's going through such a hard time. She can wait that 30 seconds. Anybody that you're talking to can wait. Right. And then after that, your child's going to be happy to go off and play by themselves most of the time. And that was all they needed, was just a 30-second burst of attention. And sometimes, if we don't give them the 30-second burst of attention, it can turn into power struggles. Right. It can turn into a really long tantrum. Right. It can turn into tears and hurt and all those things that take a lot longer to handle than just 30 seconds of pausing.
And then your conversation is
then you can have
pretty much shot.
Right, exactly. You're not going to be able to talk to your friend after that. No. Forget it. Oh, there Bobby goes again. I can never talk to anybody on my own. I don't even have my own life. Right. And then you start having these negative feelings, and I'm sure Bobby's hurt. Right. No one wants that to happen. So this is a really good way, one technique of preventing a tantrum from happening. So I don't know. Can you think of other ways, Nicole, that you could prevent one from happening?
Again, I think it's just, recognizing what the child wants. They want to do something. You don't want them to do it. You give them a distraction. They want to get into something. And you're like, no, don't do that. And then you try to just be like, don't do that. And that's not working. And you're just, again, engaging this power struggle with the child. You know what? Let's go over here and look at this. And a lot of times, especially when they're younger, you can sort of distract them with something else more fun to do, a different sort of toy or some sort of activity. Let's go look outside. Let's go, let's go read a book together. And you can kind of distract them away from whatever it is we don't want them to do.
Yeah, it's called redirection. So that can be a really simple way of, especially like you said, Nicole, with the younger ones. Yes. You can make it really fun and be like, over here. Often they'll be distracted by that. Right. it's amazing how often this simple redirection can work. We know how well it works in magic. We're all tricked by the magician, right? So if you just think of it like with your child, right? If we believe magicians, our child's going to believe us.
Yeah, they are.
So that's thank you for bringing that up, Nicole. I think that's a really good way of preventing a tantrum from happening. Another way of preventing a tantrum from happening kind of goes along with, I don't know if you guys have been watching our previous segments on some great skills on how to bond with your child. Those skills were describing what the child's doing, reflecting what the child's saying, and praising the good behavior. So all of those are tied to observing your child and what they're doing, noticing what they're doing, noticing their moods, noticing how they're feeling.
Right.
So this technique of preventing tantrums from happening is tied to that. You really want to notice what your child's doing, what they're feeling before it gets to a 10.
Yeah.
And you're drowning up here and you don't know what to do.
And then there's that's the point of no return. It's not going back. The kid is at where they're at. And the only way to kind of get themselves calm again is to sort of have that tantrum so it all just can come out. And then we just sort of have to let it ride. Right.
Ride it out and then go on with our lives. Right. And then, of course, there's hurt feelings along the way. Right. So if we can kind of, they might be getting upset and maybe starting to whine, for example. That's a good first indication that maybe something might be wrong. And our children are all going to have different ways of showing us that they're having a hard time or that they're upset. Some might pull on our shirt or like tap us or yell our name or they might whine or throw something at us.
Right, there you go.
Something to get our attention. And so noticing whatever cues, your child best. So you know when they're starting to get upset.
Right.
And instead of waiting for them to because we might be in the middle of something, and we might just, hopefully that's just going to go away. I won't have to deal with it, and then I can go on, because we all are busy. We all have busy lives. Here's the thing, though. If we keep ignoring it in that way, sometimes what's going to happen is the tantrum's going to happen. It's going to escalate.
Right.
That doesn't mean you have to give in to whatever your child needs you to do. If it's a bid for attention and they just want a moment of connection with you, that might be all they need. Maybe a little pat on the back or just a little, hey, good to see you. Oh, I like what you made. Often our children are constantly trying to show us things that they did or things that they want to show us.
Right.
And it can get really tiring after a while sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially when we're busy.
Right. And a lot of times our children's behavior, both positive and negative, especially the negative, is about them trying to tell us something, trying to communicate something, trying to, engage us. It's relational. They want this connection with you, and they want to be involved in this relationship. And so this is sort of the only way sometimes they know how to do that.
Right. And really, as parents, this is the first relationship they're going to have with anybody. We may have many relationships in our lives, and we also have important ones, but we have different ways we can get the different needs we need. Child really only has the parent and other people, of course, in their life, but for the most part, it's you. And they feel desperate to get it because you're just so important to them.
Yeah,
they just really want to connect with you. And sometimes they can go about doing that some pretty funny ways. But typically, the good and bad behavior, I'm glad you brought that up, is really to connect in some way and feel important.
Right. And this is one of the reasons why Pari and I kind of are believers of not using physical discipline, not using harsh discipline, and maybe sometimes not even using what we would say is punishment. Again, not to say that we're not going to correct behavior, we're not letting our kids get away with something, but because those types of punishments or those types of disciplines kind of disconnect.
Yes.
And, they kind of put a kink in the relationship instead of building the relationship. It's like a bit of a disconnect. And then the kids' needs aren't getting met, and, it's not good for you either with your relationship with your child.
No. And we really want to build that connection with our children, because later on, when they become teenagers and they, there's some hard stuff going on, you want to have a good connection with your child so that you can manage these bigger things that are going to come up. So putting in the time early is really going to make a difference. It's never too late to make a connection with your child, though.
So one form or one way of kind of addressing behaviors or addressing things that aren't going the way we want to, instead of using some of those other things we talked about in our last segment that maybe we want to try not to do, is what we might call a time in.
Yes.
Or a meeting on the couch. Kind of whatever you and your family want to call it, you can make it. So it sounds similar to a timeout. And Pari and I are going to...
We've all heard of timeouts.
Right. And Pari and I are going to talk about timeouts in just a couple of minutes. But we want to talk about these time-ins first. So these are a way for whoever, mom and kid, or dad and kid, or the whole family to kind of come together.
Whatever type of family you have.
Together, right? To have that, to build that relationship and that connection, and kind of talk about or figure out what just happened or what went wrong. Okay.
Right.
So first of all, in any sort of discipline, or anytime we're kind of setting limits or setting rules or addressing behavior, we want to make sure that we're calm.
Yes.
And our emotional state,
good point.
Right? So tantrums, and when our kids misbehave, it's frustrating, and it can irritate us, and can kind of maybe sometimes push us over the top. And that's normal, and it happens to everybody. But before we address whatever's happening, we want to cool off. If we need to take sort of a break first, take some space or whatever we need to do, and then we'll come back, however long it takes you. And then we can come back and address what's happening.
Right. And that can also give the child time to cool down a little bit too. So you're going to cool down. You're going to be more calm. You're going to be able to be more effective at discipline, instead of being as emotional and sometimes very reactive. And often, sometimes we say things we don't really want to say during those times. That's why the cool-off period, like Nicole was talking about, is so important. And can be really hard to do in the moment, though, right?
Right.
You just want to get your point across.
Yes.
And sometimes it can be hard to stop and just take a second. That's really going to teach your child how to regulate themselves when they're getting angry with other people at school and their jobs and their lives. Okay, I'm just going to take a breather for a second. Instead of letting myself get more and more upset, you're modeling that for them in that moment. And that's showing what a strong parent and individual that you are.
Right. Yeah. So a meeting on the couch or a time in kind of is a family thing or a together thing to build relationship and connection. What else is involved in the time in? Sorry.
Right. So instead of, like you said, instead of having a timeout where it's very isolating and the child really is in a bid to connect, ended up isolating, and then it's kind of going to perpetuate things. We want to bring it together and have a meeting together on a couch, whatever, wherever you guys want to do it. You can do it in the kitchen. I know a a lot of people like to do that because it's a place of bonding. Go for a walk
together.
Right. Anything you'd like to do, but it's somehow spending some time together, some way of spending some time together, and letting the child know what they did was not okay.
Right.
It was not okay. So we're not condoning that they just get to, do whatever the heck they want. And you're kind of trying to get to the bottom of it. What's going on? What was happening? And not be why, because they're not going to know why.
Sometimes they don't.
They may know why, especially if they're a little bit older. But the younger ones, they're not going to know why. They just got upset. They don't know, and they might be afraid to say, "I just missed you," or "I just wanted to talk to you."
Right.
And no one is listening. Whatever it may be, or it's not fair. And that's hard. That's a hard lesson for anybody to learn, even us. It may be. And so I think that can be a really good time to connect and figure out what's happening. And then you can talk about limits, talk about, okay, like this is the appropriate limit that I'm setting for you. And this is the appropriate consequence that's going to come as a result of it. And then it's more of a agreement as opposed to a punishment.
Right.
Or kind of, I told you.
Right. And you should also give the child a chance to kind of talk and say things once you've kind of said your piece, allow them to have a chance as well to do that. Yeah.
That's really going to help our children be more articulate. It's going to help with their language. It's going to help them talk about these inner struggles that are happening so they're not holding it all inside. What happens when we hold things all inside? It builds up and builds up and builds up, and then we explode. So let's teach our children to kind of just talk about earlier how they might be feeling.
Right.
Which is also going to prevent a tantrum from happening to begin with.
Right. So meetings on the couch or time-ins don't always have to occur only when something negative is behaving or when a child misbehaves.
I'm glad you brought that up.
So these are similar to what maybe you would have with older kids, like teenagers, we might call a family meeting.
Yes.
When something else is going on. Maybe you just need to talk about something and that's happening in the family. Maybe you notice their child is feeling sad. Blue. Or something is just off with the child and you just kind of want to reconnect with them and have a little meeting and find out what's going on. And it's a way to support and, again, just a way to connect as a family.
Right. And that can be, so they're not always dreading these meetings because it's something they did bad. But it's also a time to connect. Connection is the key to reducing these negative behaviors, to getting your child to listen to you, to getting them to make the right choices.
So, what about timeouts?
Yeah.
Sorry. What if I want to use a timeout?
Well, I know a lot of people use timeouts, and sometimes that's what is warranted. It would be good to try out these time-ins and meetings on the couch and try to find a way to connect first. And sometimes it's okay to use a timeout maybe after you try some of these other things. If you're going to use a timeout, though, it's really important to do it right. And there's something we call the perfect timeout. So we're going to practice that here for you today. I wanted to just kind of let you know the sequence really fast. So really what's going to happen is we're going to give a command, and we've gone over in a previous segment about how to give an appropriate direct command. Go ahead and watch that segment if you haven't already, because that's really going to help you build on that skill to be able to do the timeout skill. So the direct command is something like, Nicole, please hand me the yellow block. And then, if she's not listening to me, then I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nicole, you have 2 choices. You can hand me the yellow block, or you're going to go to timeout. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Nicole, you chose to go to timeout. And then I would walk her to the timeout chair. So we're going to go ahead and practice that, but I just wanted to let you know the sequence first. So you're going to give a direct command. You're going to count to 5 to give them a chance. Let's give them a chance to do it instead of right away.
Right.
They're going to know. By the time 5 hits, they're going to give the 2 choices, which are to listen or to go to timeout.
Right.
Those are the 2 choices. Then you count to 5 again because you want to give them a chance,
to listen.
Again, to listen before you have to go to the whole ordeal of timeout. Because timeout can be very difficult to get through sometimes.
Yes, it can.
So let's try first to get them to comply.
Okay.
Let's try.
All right. So.
Okay. Nicole, the toys need to stay on the table. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
These toys are dumb anyways.
Nicole, you have 2 choices. You can keep the toys on the table or you can go to timeout. 1,
I have to play with these same
2,
stupid toys.
3, 4, 5. Okay, Nicole, you've chose to go to timeout. We're going to go over here to timeout. Okay, Nicole, stay here until I tell you to get out. Okay, so now I'm going to take a second and take a deep breath. Okay, so time has passed. Now you might be wondering, how much time do I give? And you want to just, as soon as they seem like they're calmed down, you want to bring them back over. So, Nicole, are you ready to come back and keep the toys on the table?
Yes.
Okay, come back and sit down and we can play together again. Nicole, please put the toys back on the table. Thank you so much for putting the toys back on the table. I really like it when you listen to me. And you follow the rules. So, and that, you notice I gave a follow-up command when I came back, and she listened, so I knew she was ready to come back and play together again. along with the rules that we've had in place. And then I praised her for listening. They really need that connection. That goes back to what we're saying. It comes full circle. Try to make the timeout something still about connection if you're going to use a timeout.
Right.
Yes.
All right. So that's pretty much all the time that we have for today. But like always, if you have any questions about anything that you've seen here, if you have anything you would like us to cover or questions about anything we haven't done, you can always visit our Facebook page, Parenting Corner. Leave us a comment. Let us know.
Please do.
And we also, wanted to introduce this book that we use often with our clients.
Yes.
This talks a little bit more about the time-ins or the meetings on the couch, and a little bit about why we don't use, the physical discipline. It's called Playful Parenting.
Oh, it's such a great book. It's so much fun. You're going to have so much fun with your child when you're reading this book, and it's such a fun read. Yes. Easy read. So go ahead and check this book out, Playful Parenting, by Lawrence Cohen.
Right. Very good. Thank you for joining us
Thanks
today.
so much
and
for
we'll
coming.
See you next time.